Fischstraße for 1 kilometer. Better route.
Around. Right. And then next night they'll fucking fly to this place or that place.
Yeah.
Just goes places and fucks around. Writing. Always working on new bits.
Yeah.
Always turning over material.
No, you gotta do it. Now, do you still listen to sets? Do you record sets?
Yeah, I record all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I owe myself a few listens, though. I've been slacking off. Especially the bottom of the barrel listens. Those are the ones you really gotta listen to.
Yeah, that's a really fun show.
Yeah.
I'm like, it makes me uncomfortable, which is why it's fun to do. You like, if the people don't know, I guess if the audience writes down shit and you just pull them out.
Yeah, you have a barrel and the audience writes down suggestions for topics, and then you just reach in the barrel, pull it out, and start riffing.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
It was super fun. Yeah, that's not, I don't...
In 300 meters, at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Bonhoefferstrasse.
Do a lot of that, so it was fun to get in that spot, and yeah, that was great. That room fucking rules, the smaller room.
Yeah, that's an honest little room.
They were fucked up last night. The early
Super
show.
intimate. It's a super intimate room.
Yeah, it was great. They were. It felt like a 1 a.m. spot last night.
The late show?
No, it was the early one.
Oh, really?
They were like,
fucked up on the early show?
They were jacked up. Yeah, it was one of those ones where like you say something and then they kind of break into conversation a little bit, and I'm like, "Are you all right? What are you guys?" And they're like, "Oh no, we're good." Like I'm in the way. But they were fucking great, and it was really fun getting stuff out of them. Because a room that small, if people are kind of chatting or chuckling, you can deal with them more. It's like when you're in a massive room and somebody's yelling or talking from the back, you can't really deal with it.
Yeah, if you're in a theater and that's happening, it's a real problem.
Exactly.
But in a comedy club, you can just pause and go, "What are we doing?"
Yeah. Have like a real dialogue with them.
Yeah.
And,
but you don't want to. That's the thing. It's like we've got to train people to just not talk out loud. Just like you don't do in the movie theater, don't do it at a comedy club. And don't talk to the comedians either. Don't just talk at them.
Well, do you think, I mean, what do you think about all these crowd work clips? Don't you think we're breeding this? I feel like it's a very bad situation.
It's not a bad situation because it's just how they do it. Some people do it that way.
But it makes the audience want more of that. I was talking, my niece just went to college and she has a roommate who's like 18 years old. She's like essentially a high school kid. And she was like, "What do you think of crowd work?" And I'm like, it's so crazy that like teenage kids are like, "Oh, crowd work." Like,
well, because those are the clips you can put online because it doesn't burn your material.
Right.
Because it's a unique moment.
Right. But sometimes I feel like there's comics going up there just trying to get those moments.
They definitely are.
Annoying. And then the audience thinks like, "Oh, I'll be part of this."
Well, there's comics that'll trick you too. You go see their actual act. And you know, the thing about crowd work is it's always funnier when you're there.
Of
right?
course.
But it's always funnier because everyone knows it's happening live and you don't know what's going to happen, and neither does a comedian. They know it's completely improvised.
Well, that's why it works, because obviously comedy's about getting everybody to be like, "Oh, yeah." And if they're seeing it live, it just happened.
Good point.
So, but DePaulo used to always say that, you know, worked with Nick for years, and he'd be like, "Oh, you're funny off the cuff? Yeah, that's called fucking being funny. That's easy. Write some material, you fuck."
Yeah, if you can do both, that's great.
Right.
But some people only do one or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's...
In 400 meters, at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Kirkheimer Strasse.
There's tricks to it. Obviously.
You definitely don't want to encourage people to interrupt people who don't do crowd work, though. And that's where it becomes a problem when people are drunk and they think, "I'm going to get on a video."
Right.
You know, that kind of shit does happen.
Now, how do you feel about MCs in New York, which is the only city that does this, where the MC goes up and just asks everybody where they're from and does almost exclusively crowd work? They never did that in Boston when I was starting.
In 300 meters, turn right onto Plochinger Strasse.
They didn't do it here in Austin, really.
Why do they do that in New York?
I don't know. It's a New York thing. Like, New York comics, they think that's what the MC does. I think part of it is to find out where everyone's from because there's so many tourists. But most MCs in New York just do a lot of crowd work. And I've heard people even be like, "I don't like hosting because I don't do crowd work." And I'm like, well, you don't have to. Just fucking go.
Does anybody not do crowd work? Does anybody just go up and say, "Hey"?
Head northwest on Kirkheimer Strasse towards Plochinger Strasse. Continue.
Everybody, how you doing?
We've
you about my day?
I don't think so.
Really?
When I hosted this years ago, when Artie Fuqua got in the accident, they needed hosts at the Cellar, so I volunteered, and I hosted for like 6 weeks. And I feel like I was the only one that just went straight into material, which I think is better because I find the audience, if they're, when they're settling in and ordering and getting their drinks and whatever, figuring out who's sitting where, if you look up and the comic is talking to somebody, they're going, okay, it hasn't really started yet. He's talking to that lady. But if you look up and they're in the middle of a bit, you're like, shh, fucking quiet, the show started. That's how I always felt.
Yeah. The problem with someone talking to the audience is it does kind of encourage the audience to talk to some of the future comedians if they have a point that the person disagrees with, or if they're getting to a point and you cut them off because you can say something. You know, sometimes like guys will mislead you with a bit and you're like, what is he saying? Oh, ha ha ha. But some people jump in the middle of it.
Right.
And fuck it up.
Exactly.
And they think they can because someone's been talking to them in the audience.
Exactly, yes. And they're like, oh, this is a dialogue. I got it. Perfect.
Exactly. Or it gives them an opportunity to be outraged. And now this is kind of encouraged to give feedback. It's encouraged to talk.
Right. I also think that the audience needs to hear the rhythm of a few jokes. But to me, it's like if you do crowd work for 5 minutes and then do 10 minutes of jokes. But sometimes you have an MC where you're like, if you're going first, you're like, I'm now the first one telling a joke, which is no good. I think the audience needs to hear like, oh, okay, some bits.
Yeah, I think that definitely would set everybody else up for the rest of the night. And that's really what the MC should be doing.
But I remember Attell would get annoyed because Attell always wants to know where everyone's from. So he would ask me like, where are they from? And I was like, I don't know. And you can see that he was like, what? And there's nothing worse than upsetting
That's
Attell.
so New York. That's so
I
New
know.
York. It's so weird.
I know.
The New York has this one thing where everybody goes and asks the fucking audience member where they're from.
It's very strange. And they're like, what do you do? I remember seeing a comic one time.
In 200 meters, at the roundabout, continue straight to stay on Stuttgarter Strasse.
It made me laugh so hard. The audience member made me laugh so hard because the person was like, what are you doing? And they were like, I'm at a show. What do you mean, what am I doing? They're like, I'm on a date. I don't get it. I just never, to me, it's like, we're supposed to be doing a show. I don't get why, I don't care what the audience is from or what they're doing.
I always felt like that style came out of the fact that the comedy clubs in New York, when I was coming up, they were all very intimate. They were very small.
Yeah.
Like Boston Comedy was very small. Catch a Rising Star was small. The Cellar's small. And because you're like right on top of people and they're packed in and there's not that many of them, I felt like it's more intimate. The stage is smaller, and I think it sort of led comedians to want to kind of like personalize everything.
Yeah. Which I feel in this small room at your club. What's it called?
Little Boy.
Yeah, it's like I do instinctively start being like, you ever had this? Because it does feel like you're at a hang.
Yeah, you're hanging.
Right.
Which is really nice. Like if you're doing material, because it's just like you're real intimate in that room. That movie, you're on top of those people.
Yeah, I feel like you could shoot a special in there, or maybe someone already had. I think somebody shot one in the big room.
David Lucas just shot a special in that little room.
Yeah. It's a fucking killer ride. Brian, did he shoot something at your room?
He shot something in the big room.
Brian Simpson blew me away last night.
Oh, he's hilarious.
By the way, I always knew he was funny, but it's so rare you get to sit and watch comedy. And I sat in the balcony watching, and I was like, this guy's like next level.
The balcony's the shit, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. It's awesome.
When we first were walking around the building, when it was its bare bones, and we're standing up there in the balcony, one of the first things we were thinking, like, you know how badass it's going to be just sitting up here chilling and like...
Continue on Kirkheimer Strasse for 4 kilometers.
And Chappelle go on stage. And so when it actually happened, when we were there, the week it opened, and Dave came by, and we're watching him. I'm standing on the balcony. I'm like, dude, I looked at Tony Hinchcliffe, and I go, this is like exactly what we imagined. It was the exact thing that we imagined.
That's an unbelievable feeling. I don't want to sound gay, but we're very lucky people that we've lived a life where it's like, I imagined this and then did it. And it happened. It's
great. Yeah, super, super lucky. But also, like, that's a good thing. Like, when I was thinking about doing it, I didn't want to do it. I'm like, this is too much work. I don't want to be involved in this. I always told comedians, be really nice to club owners because we need them and you don't want to be them.
Right.
We need them. We need someone to own the club. We need a place to go. Who would want to deal with some of the maniacs that we knew. This is it.
Oh, wow.
That's the little boy. No, that's the big room. That's
the balcony.
The balcony, right? Yeah.
Wow, that's killer.
Yeah, so that's before the concrete had been poured. It's, those guys are standing on foam. So there's a foundation under that, and then they put these massive blocks of dense foam, and then on top of the foam, then they lay more of that rebar and then pour concrete. It's crazy what they did, because it was basically set up like a movie theater, like tiered like stadium tile type seating, and we lifted the floor up and made it flat.
So how did it work? Did you I feel like I'm interviewing you now, but I mean, how did you just explain the vision to
I have an amazing architect. Richard's an amazing architect. And one of the things about Richard is he's also a musician. He's an artist. He's like, he has an eye for things. He sees things, and he totally got the concept of it. And so when we looked at another building, I told you about the place that was owned by a cult. So we had that place, and then that one fell apart. And then when that fell apart, it was really hard to find another spot. And this place wasn't for sale. They only wanted to lease it. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I need to be able to own it. It doesn't make any sense. And so, fortunately, they changed their mind, and they sold it to me. And when they sold it, and one of the things they liked was that, 6th Street, they're making a lot of apartment buildings and high rises, and they loved the fact that I was just going to keep it a live entertainment venue.
Yeah.
And because it's a 1927 theater. Stevie Ray Vaughan played there in the 80s.
Yeah, I saw all the posters. Yeah. Killer fucking bands. Now, were you drawing sketches, or were you just saying this is what I'd like it to look like?
Richard did everything, but Richard Weiss. We went over it. We had a structure, right? Because there was Alamo Draft House had been there before, and we also had a big advantage in that Richard had redesigned the Alamo Draft House. So he was the one who was in charge of that project. So he knew the whole bones of the building, because they converted it from I think it was a rock and roll club previous to that, and then they turned it into the Alamo Draft House. And so they had to build a kitchen, they had to build these rooms, they had to, set it up for the movies and do everything. So he knew exactly where everything was. And so we had 2 rooms in one building, which I really liked, because I wanted a smaller, more intimate room and a bigger room. Yeah. And so when we saw it, we just had to address okay, how do we do this? And we had a bunch of different ways of looking at it. We always agreed that the projection room would be the green room. That makes the most sense. It's in the center of the 2 rooms, and it gives you the option of just literally walking there and seeing one room, or going this way to the balcony and seeing the other room.
Yeah.
So that was a no-brainer. And then we blew the walls out so it connects to the balcony, and we set everything up and moved all the equipment out. We had old projectors in there and shit. And then we built everything out. And then in the process of building everything out, I had Louis come and look at it. Yeah. And Louis had some amazing advice. He gave me some great advice about shrinking the size of the stage in the little room, lowering the ceiling even further. And the little room was a low ceiling. He's like, can you get it lower?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I think we can get it lower. Maybe a foot or 2 lower. So we did that. And then in the main room, the same thing. He said, lower the ceiling. And so the ceiling drops. So you have, the balcony, and you can see how the ceiling drops when you look out the balcony. So you just see the top of the stage.
Right. I always thought it'd be a great idea. I mean, it would cost billions of dollars to have a comedy club that you could move the walls in depending on the crowd size. You know how there's a curtain, but you wish you could just fucking physically move the wall to tighten it up. Because obviously comedy just works tighter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an impossibility. This is my fantasy. I mean, maybe it's not an impossibility.
I don't think it's an impossibility. You'd just have to have walls that were on tracks, and you'd have the tracks built into some sort of an engine that moved them back and forth. But it'd probably be stupid. It would take up way too much room. How are they powered? Are they diesel generated, or are they electric?
No, manpower. Everyone gets behind the audience.
Oh, Jesus.
Just pushes the wall in.
Yeah, it would have to be that, because if it was some sort of a computer, it would malfunction and kill everyone. It would just compress the entire audience.
Like fucking Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly, like Star Wars. Imagine if you have a sold-out show and someone hits the 100-seat button. And people just stacked up on top of each other in the middle of the fucking room.
That's a great episode for, one of those, what do you call it? What's that fucking show? Black Mirror. Or I was thinking of Twilight Zone, but yeah, same shit. what I was wondering, though, if you just explain to the architect what it looks like. Because this blew my mind a while ago. I was watching like some Springsteen behind the album thing. I don't know if it was The River or Darkness or whatever. But I never knew. There's a scene where Bruce is talking to Clarence Clemens, and it's just like, it should sound like this. And he's just mouthing the sound of the saxophone, which in my mind, it's like Bruce is writing musical notes or something.
Right.
You don't picture a guy just being like, it should sound like this. And then the guy does it. It kind of was like, wow.
You know, it blew me away, but there's a lot of musicians who don't read music.
No, I think like most, and it's funny, I took mandolin, not most, but many rock musicians.
In 300 meters, turn left onto Jahnstrasse.
Mandolin lessons years ago, and it was fun, and I thought I wouldn't be able to read music because I'd always hear like Eddie Vedder can't read music and Bruce Spring. And it turns out it's not that hard. They just didn't feel like learning it. Like in my mind, I was like, these geniuses can't.
Turn left onto Jahnstrasse.
And then the lady was like, no, they just didn't want to learn how to read music.
It's just, it looks like a weird alien language when you see all the musical notes and everything. Like, to me, they register as nothing.
Of course.
I've seen people with musical.
Continue on Jahnstrasse